If you haven't listened to episode 111, Big Fall from Bad Comms with Manny and Tyler, pause here and go back and listen to that episode. We referred to the episode quite a few times during this conversation, and you might want to be tuned into that episode before listening to this next one. So at the end of May, I flew to Colorado with my mom and my dog Keeches to record a live interview with Laura McGladrey, founder of the Responder Alliance. This event was at eTOWN Hall in Boulder. It was a huge success. There were 67 tickets sold, and needless to say, I was extremely moved by the turnout and by the final product. This episode is part one of a two-part series with Laura McGladrey. The first part is all about psychological stress injuries in outdoor culture, and make sure to follow up when part two is released on August 1st. Part two is titled The Route to Healing, Supporting Each Other and Ourselves, and Laura will offer some tools and resources to move through some stress injuries and healing. Now let's go ahead and begin the recording of part one of Route to Resilience, Psychological Stress Injuries in Outdoor Culture with Laura McGladrey. I hope you enjoy. Hello, everybody. How are you? Hi, I'm Ashley, creator, producer, hostess, interviewer, all things the Sharpen podcast. Thank you all so much for being here. Old friends, new friends, prior guests on the show. If you've been on the show, can you raise your hand? So these folks have some pretty amazing stories to tell, so I encourage you to chat them up at the end. And also, can you all say hi to my mom? My mom is my biggest fan, and she always wears that sweater whenever we hang out, and we hang out a lot. And she flew down here with me from Alaska to help me. Thanks, Mom. Thank you to the raffle sponsors, Rocky Talkie, American Alpine Institute, Desert Mountain Medicine, Front Range Climbing Company, My Medic, Responder Alliance, and My Mama for donating really awesome raffle items. Tickets are only $10. You have a pretty good chance of winning something, so I would buy one ticket at least, and the drawing will be at the end. Thanks to eTOWN for this amazing space. It's such an amazing space. And to the Responder Alliance for accepting the invitation for the interview. Please check out the Gratitude Wall. It's a space where you can write how the podcast and or Responder Alliance have impacted you. Now I would like to welcome Paul on the stage. He's a board member with the Responder Alliance Foundation, and he can just share a little bit about what that is and why you're here. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks, Ashley. Round of applause for Ashley. So I know we all want to get to the main event, the conversation with Laura and Ashley. You just have me for about 3 minutes or so on the stage. So thanks everyone for being here. I know many of you in the audience are familiar with Responder Alliance. And in a moment here, Glad will come up. Laura founded Responder Alliance over a decade ago, but it's only been 6 months since we started and launched our newest nonprofit, the Responder Alliance Foundation. So I just want to take a couple minutes to talk about our Responder Alliance Foundation. My name is Paul Dreyer, as Ashley said, and I sit on the board. I'm the chair of our board of directors with the foundation. And what we do at the foundation is we are on a mission to really remove the financial stress for folks to access stress resilience training and stress resilience research. So how we do that is we provide funding across 3 different arms. We provide scholarship financial aid for training, initial training. We provide resiliency grants for deepening professional development. And then we also provide funding for ongoing research to make sure that what we're teaching, the efficacy and the validity of our work around stress injuries or around resilience is accurate and even getting better as we move forward. So that's what we do. Really, this, as we all know, our budgets are tight individually and also with teams, and particularly as we start looking for professional development dollars as groups and teams across search and rescue, across outdoor educators, across ski patrol, across the various sectors that Responder Alliance works with. All of our budgets are really tight. So again, we're trying to remove that financial stress by providing funding for those folks. That's how we do it. I'll get to this last slide here in a second, but we're in for a treat tonight. I know everyone's already doing the QR code. I'll tell you what this QR code means in a second. But we're in for a treat tonight. We're getting to experience an intimate conversation with Ashley and Laura. So what I'd love you to do is just silence your phones right now, just so we can hold that space together. So go ahead and pull out your phones and just put them on silent mode or vibrate mode. And then don't put them away. Right? So your phones are all out. So go ahead and scan this QR code. Where this QR code will take you, this is to the landing page for the foundation. And don't worry about exploring that page. I just want you to preload this page, because through our evening tonight, as I said, we're just in for a treat. We're going to hear some amazing information from Laura and Ashley. We're also going to hear very likely some difficult information, some hard information for us. So I have no doubt that we're going to leave this evening full of feeling just super hopeful, and also very likely feeling some sadness as well. And it'll be holding those two dichotomous emotions that we're going to leave here spurred on to action, to how can I act from here. And that's when we're going to go back to our foundation website that you just loaded up on your phone. And this landing page can be your guide to act. What you'll find on this website here, you'll learn a little bit more about the foundation, but more importantly, you'll see 2 call to action buttons. One will be to make a tax-deductible donation, which we would love. The other call to action button you'll see is a way to get, as an individual or team, to apply for scholarships. And this has just gone live on our website. We're super excited about this, that it's a simple Google form for you, for teams that you work with, for others that you know, to apply for scholarship for aid for initial training and continued professional development. So you'll see those 2 call to actions, the tax-deductible donation or financial assistance to apply for training. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll bring Ashley back up here, is the last call to action when we leave here tonight is feel free to share this landing page with others, with communities, with your friends, with teams that you work with. And I think it's fitting that the last thing I say is just around community and connection. Because, all of this work, our conversation tonight, so much of it comes down to connection. And actually, so much of your work in the Sharp End podcast is around connection. So let's get on with the show. I'll invite Ashley back up here. And also, I think many of you all know this, but Ashley came from Alaska and Aram came from Alaska. And so it's a far way to come to just connect with this community and our local Boulder and Denver community. So if we can give another just warm round of applause for Ashley as she comes back on the stage.
Thank you so much. That was really nice. Made me blush. Okay, so as you all know, the guests on my show share outdoor incidents they were involved in, right? That is what the podcast is all about. Many of those stories have physical injuries that come out of it, say a broken leg or broken ankle or an avalanche burial. So they're all pretty, physical traumas. But in 2018, I had the pleasure of interviewing Laura McGladrey for the 34th episode of my podcast. That episode is titled Psychological First Aid. And at that time, I had no idea what that was. And it was during that very interview that I did with Laura that I realized that I actually have a stress injury from this podcast. It's true. So what I learned in 10 and a half years, that's over 10 years of producing this podcast, is the importance of highlighting and creating awareness around the very topic that brought you all here today. Who here knows Laura McGladrey? Wow. Okay, who doesn't know Laura McGladrey? Let's go that way. Okay, that's pretty impressive, Laura. You're so famous. If you don't know her, Laura is an amazing human. Laura is an outdoors person just like you and me. She is also a ski patroller, nurse practitioner, teaches at the College of Nursing, and has been all around the world teaching all types of people from search and rescue personnel, fire rescue, and wilderness responders about stress, injuries, and psychological first aid. I would like to warmly welcome the founder and director of the Responder Alliance on the stage.
Hello, my people. I can't see you. but I know you're there. The bright lights, the big city.
Just imagine they're all naked. It's glorious. Just kidding. Or am I? So yeah, Laura, thank you so much for being here. I know we've been talking about this for quite some time, and here we are. So thank you.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Laura, in Tyler and Manny's example, which you watched with everybody, I realized when I was recording the episode, you probably realized, the audience probably realized that Tyler is he's experiencing a stress injury. So and that was over a year and a half of the actual incident happened that we had that interview. So that was bottled up for a long time. My question is why did it take him so long to learn that he had a stress injury?
Well, I wonder also as people took that in, just how familiar it was for folks who've been in the outdoor industry or in rescue or out there on the front lines doing cool things. Many of us have sat in tents and snow caves and bars and patrol huts with our people, and we've seen that look on their face. And we've felt for them. We haven't really known what to do about it. And I was thinking as we were watching that, like how after teaching wilderness medicine for 20 years, how we would have reacted if in that moment he said, I also fell that day. I fell on my ankle. I think I broke it. Or I don't know what happened, but I've been limping ever since. And we would all be like, well, you might have fractured it. Maybe we should see an ortho.
Or have you riced it?
There's all sorts of things. And I think what really breaks my heart and compels me about Tyler's story and how much Manny cares about him is just not knowing what it was. What really compelled me was a look on his face like, oh, that's a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. And I think we still have a lot of work to do to discover what that is, because I think one of the things we'll talk about tonight is once you know, I've been in emergency medicine for a long time. Once you know what something is, you start generating ideas of how to fix it. And I think what's hard probably for Tyler is he didn't know what this feeling was. And he sat with it and he probably thought, this is going to be with me forever. It's just a part of me now. And it kind of a lot of us in our generation just made peace with that feeling. So stress injury, do you want me to talk a little bit about why the name? Where did that come from?
Yes, please. Yeah. Why the name? How'd you get into it? What is a stress injury?
So stress injury is the nomenclature used actually first by the U.S. government in the military operations. And I kind of stumbled onto this in a funny way I'll share with you. But I sort of went for parts unknown. I moved to Colorado to be a raft guide because that was my real career, not nursing. And I finally got back into nursing so I could fund my Grand Canyon habit and other things. And I actually think, many of us who started many years ago in this, I was watching my friends injured by this all the time, but I also didn't know it was a thing. I actually started after my years of humanitarian aid and wilderness medicine. I myself was looking for, this is important, might come back to it later, but I returned from a year on the north-south border, South Sudan, and I didn't want to do all the things I used to love. So despite getting every certificate one could think of for advanced life support and pediatrics and obstetrics and wilderness medicine and WUMPs and all the certificates, when I returned from Africa, I didn't want to work in the ER anymore. I didn't want to climb. I didn't want to, and I didn't know what it was. So I just had to, my cover up was going back to grad school. That's what we do when we're like, I'll just go back to grad school.
Just suffer some more.
Yeah, I'll just do something else because I don't know what this is. I don't know why I don't love this anymore. I mean, I worked so hard for it. Why don't I love it? And I took the job I knew how to do. I went back. I was following this one thread. They say all research is me search. So I was following this thread that was like, what would happen if everyone like me who had finally figured out how to do all the things. I'm talking to you, AMGA guides, like you have every cert known to man, and you're like maybe I don't want to use my certs anymore. What would happen at the middle of the career? So I went back, and I'm a family nurse practitioner. I went back for a psych mental health nurse practitioner, and I started working with law enforcement and fire and EMS because those were my people, and that was the only language I really spoke besides outdoor dirtbag. Mm-hmm. And so what I discovered, and the reason we really came to this word in my practice was people were waiting to see me until their lives were falling apart. We would joke that I was the last bus stop, right? They'd go see a therapist, and the therapist is like, this isn't working. You better go see a prescriber. That was me. And the reasons that they would come see me was either a partner was going to leave them. They literally I'm crying in the ambulance bay, this isn't working. Or they got a fitness for duty. Something really went wrong. Yeah. And anyway, the problem was, I'm like, man, if this was wilderness medicine, it would be like waiting till people were in the psychological ICU. We would be like, let's just wait till you have that crushing chest pain before we treat it. And so there was no real name for it. But when I discovered that the military was using this in combat operations, they were calling it stress injury. I went down the rabbit hole, and Canada was calling it occupational stress injury. I was like, man, that's it, right? If you are injured, impacted by stress, and remember, stress can be traumatic stress, it can be depletion stress or mission stress, but if you're impacted by stress, you're injured by it. And so that's really when we brought the nomenclature in, and it wasn't 5 minutes later that we were like, well, what about our people? Is patrol hearing about this?
Search and rescue.
Search and rescue, or the guides?
Yeah. The people that witness does Manny hear about it?
Right.
Who was dropped?
Right. What happened, interestingly, soon after that is I started getting these phone calls. I was already a NOLS instructor. I was kind of in that world. And the phone calls went like this. Probably someone in this audience was one of the people who called me, but I'm noticing this trend in my guides. I'm noticing that, I don't want to call out any names or who called me, but I noticed that we used to have a bunch of climbers who taught in our program, and they're all disappearing after that big accident. Or searching a national park, I'll pick on Yosar, called, and they're like, hey, we have these climbers who are incredible, who learn first aid because they want to help other people, who are literally rescuing people on the same rock that they're going to try and climb tomorrow. And I'm watching it impact them. And it was anything from they just don't want to come back anymore to they really are not doing well. They're drinking a lot. They're struggling. They seem to really, they're short fused. What is this? And it was this kind of unknown phenomenon that was happening in everyone. I just happened to be at the epicenter of where the phone calls came in and said, this is a very common thing. So what Manny sees in Tyler is happening every day, and we need to talk about it more.
Thank you. And you're right. The podcast, just producing this podcast, I would say 90% of the guests on my show are experiencing this. And that's why I was so moved and felt the urgency to meet with you again after since 2018, to do this follow-up because, like I said, I feel anxious and the urgency to fix this for people. So thank you for helping the world fix it.
My pleasure.
So how does one know that they have a stress injury?
I want us to think about stress injuries like we would think about a head injury or a shock. There's just these early and late changing vital signs. And some people maybe, I hope Tyler doesn't mind us talking about it.
I talked to Tyler and Manny, and they were super psyched. I was using their clip and story as an example. So
great. It might be that for some people, it's very incremental, right? It's just over time. I was so stoked to do this. I would volunteer. Now I do it for work. And then it's this kind of subtle, I don't know, with patrollers I work with, it just starts to be I don't want to do this anymore for some people. And then the fuse gets short, and then it gets harder and harder to do it. But I think Tyler's story is compelling too. For some people, it's a very a very sudden onset of that injury, when they're particularly, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more, but when you feel that you have personal responsibility for something that happened, when you think there's a tactical error that happened, I think when it's personally identified, could have been you, was you. So often, I want to say this is so interesting, and I see it so often, it's not the person who got injured that often ends up in the stress
It's true.
injury. It's the belayer. It was the person who talked him into it. It was the forecaster who put that glowing green orb of it's fine to go out there. And the challenge then is it's unseen injury, and very often the intention's going to someone else. So I think, again, for some people, I think it plays out in so many ways. I know we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I think of someone, a patroller and a guide who said to me, it really stood out, called and said, I did this amazing season guiding on Denali. It was my dream. It was the thing I'd always wanted to do. And at the end of the season, I basically he said, sort of sat down under a tree and just never got up again, because he had seen an incident. There was something he felt responsible for, and it had accumulated.
That is really tragic. Well, you gave that as an example, but you also, travel all over the place. And you work with a lot of responders, search and rescue personnel, fire and rescue, teaching a lot of this curriculum. So can you give another example of that, maybe something CRAG related?
Okay.
Because this seems like those are these people.
Yes.
Craggy people.
Our craggy people. I want to say, when you say it's really tragic, I don't think that stress injuries are tragic. I want to say this out loud. I have a lot of hope for what we can do. What's hard,
I love that word, hope,
is not knowing that you're injured.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the tragedy, where you're like, I don't know. So the way that this plays out for a lot of people is it gets turned inward. What's wrong with me? Why don't I want to climb? Why don't I want to go out with my friends? Why am I not motivated? Why don't I have energy? Why am I scared? This one really, I get the tremendous privilege because I'm a clinician. I feel like Father Mulcahy, no one probably knows who that is, but like the chaplain on MASH, that everyone comes and unloads and tells me their secrets.
Laura, these are your people. These people know MASH.
I mean, not everyone in this audience. We're talking about the Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. It was a show when I was growing up. Okay, look it up. But where were we? We started talking about that.
I watched MASH. I'm just saying. Anyway.
What I was going to say about being Father Mulcahy is that what I hear a lot, and maybe this is an answer of what's universal around the world, is that everyone thought it would never happen to them. They have subscribed to what I would call the resiliency myth, which is just because I'm a total badass, I should be resilient. This shouldn't be getting to me. So there's always a kind of a shame wall that goes with that. And I think people truly are always just digging for what they did wrong and how to fix themselves. And I think the beauty of discovering this is an injury that, to be honest, most of us will encounter some kind of stress impact or injury in our climbing careers or lifestyle, because we're doing high consequence badassery. We are more likely to lose people and watch them get injured. And candidly, we're going to watch people get injured doing the thing we have to talk our brains into going to do tomorrow, whether you're climbing or rescue or kayaking or guiding. And so I think that is what is universal, that people often, first of all, think, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know how I let this happen to me. I never thought I was going to be scared. And that one, I think, plays out for a lot of people. I never thought I was going to be scared to belay someone. I never thought I would be scared to ski. I never thought I'd be scared to drive in the snow. I never thought I'd feel scared getting in my kayak or on a helicopter. And I think that's the cool thing about naming this. You go, no, it's not a problem. Your survival circuitry is working the way it's supposed to, and we can fix it. We just have to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also the avoidance, right? It's not checking in with yourself and even considering that maybe like I never considered that I would possibly have a stress injury from this podcast. And then things like the Helmet Project or stories like Manny and Tyler's, like I will just burst into tears. And I've wanted to quit this podcast for about 7 years because it's heavy. It's like holding space to have these strangers process their trauma is like pretty weighty. So, and it's like not knowing that that's happening to me until like you actually feel it in your body and you check in with yourself. And yeah.
So I'm gonna first tip of the night to take with us. I'm gonna go full on Father Mokei on you.
Do it.
Are you ready?
Bring it on, sister.
My favorite thing, you're in a room and someone's telling you about a stress injury. I'm going to say, Ashley, of course you do. Of course you do. You can't hear a story, and then I'm talking to you rescuers out there too. I remember my friend Marcel Rodriguez saying to me, he was teaching a rope 3 rescue, he was talking about how you had to clip in to get to the edge. And he always said to everyone, just because you're a rescuer doesn't mean you get a pass on gravity. And I'm going to say the same, that just because you're a badass doesn't mean that you can overcome your survival circuitry to be connected to someone and hear the details of their story and not have, it's meant to change your next actions. That's our survival circuitry. We're supposed to see something bad happen to someone and say, I'll never do that. And so for you to hear story after story, I think it would be almost impossible for it not to change your worldview and to change your relationship with how safe you feel climbing or driving or snowmobiling or anything.
Right.
Because your brain is loaded to, once you see something hurt someone you care about, you're supposed to stay away from it. And so that, I think, is something about this injury that gets missed. Now, a change in worldview also happens to us as we grow up and we mature, and that's a good thing. We become more, we double check, we become less complacent. We know what's at stake. So that doesn't mean that you're injured, but where it might tip into injury is where, like what you said about avoidance, where you might start saying, I mean, like, when's the last time you went climbing?
Oh, girl.
Well, and you don't have to tell us again, Father.
It's been years, but in my defense, I have had 3 knee surgeries.
Yes.
So I do tend to blame it on the knee surgeries. However, I learned that is sort of been a bullshit excuse, because like the longer my recovery's been in the knee process. But I can't use that excuse now. Because I'm after my 3rd knee surgery, I'm almost to 100%, and I could go climbing.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really climb in Alaska. Let's be real. Unless you climb in the Alaska range, but let's be real, that's expensive. So it'd be hard for me to. So it's logistics for me that why I'm not climbing, and it's also an excuse because it's been so long. It's been 3.5, almost 4 years since I've climbed any rock, and I used to climb all over the place, and now it's sort of I'm kind of scared to.
Yeah.
It's almost been so long that I'm kind of scared to get back on the rock.
And you're hearing story after story.
Story after story after story. And then not only hearing it for the first time, I'm also editing the story over and over and over again.
So this is for all of you who do, my awesome patrol directors here tonight. So I'm going to shout out to, if you do accident investigation, if you are a forecaster and you have to go investigate the accident and review the drone footage, any of us who have to spend time, our circuitry is spending time there. And you asked me what I see universally. I used to, and these tiny little lies we tell ourselves.
Oh, my knee.
This is an early change. By the way, if you're wondering, have I ever had a stress injury? Have you ever had that conversation with yourself where you're like, oh, I would go kayaking, but I just don't want, What might be happening is I don't like the feeling in my body when I try and put that skirt on and get my dry top on anymore. And again, why would it matter for us to catch that? Because those things can be restored. We can reclaim the things that we love. You can reclaim climbing, but we need to overtly understand the things that are diverting us kind of under the surface, under the waterline, or it will drive us. So a lot of my first responders, we're going to be blast from the past night. There's a game that I grew up playing, some of you will know, called Operation. 2 giant sea batteries meant to scare the hell out of little kids. It's so fun if you haven't watched a kid play it. right? You're supposed to go in and get the funny bone and get out. And kids are like, I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but it just scares the hell out of them, right? Because they buzz it and they're like, ah! Well, that's the point. But I think that stress injuries, the number one sign of stress injuries is the thing that we don't see because we avoid it. So for a lot of people, let's say you are in aviation or heli rescue, and you got to get on a helicopter, but you lost someone in a crash. Then you got to get on, fly the mission, and get out without getting that feeling. You're going to start making all sorts of deals with people. But it's really hard until we notice it to know that we're actually doing it. So life and stress injury becomes smaller and smaller and smaller because there's more and more things that we try and do to get buzzed. And I think what's tragic for us is like how many of us, I did this, like literally made up a job for our parents and filled up our car, drove cross country or flew somewhere so that we could climb or ski or bike or do ridiculous stuff and call it like for a living for a while. Right? You don't have to raise your hands. I can see you now. That's what we want to restore, because what also gets lost in stress injury is we stop doing the things that gave us a reason to live because we loved it so much.
Are stress injuries new? Is this a new thing?
I wish we could have a panel from the audience on this one, because I had a great conversation tonight before we got started with some of us who've been around for a while. But stress injuries are not new. I think those of you in the audience who've been at the 25 and 30-year mark know this was always there, but talking about it is new. So for many of us and the people who came before me, I just heard a cool story from walking up from my friend Ben about another a firefighter who heard about stress injuries and started crying. And not for himself. A lot of people cry for themselves. Like, if I had known, it would have saved my marriage. It would have saved my whatever. But in this case, it was because it would have saved another person who lost their life to stress injury. And just this idea, like, if we could have talked about it. So I think
if we knew about it.
If we knew that it was a thing and we could have, for awareness, then choice. That's really like all you got to do is know, oh, that's what this is. And people start finding their own way through it. But I think our generation, the way it played out was that we just stuffed and tried to keep what little the water line would rise of the things we couldn't do, and we would just get on smaller and smaller ground to like, I can stay in it if I can just. And so I'm really thankful that this next generation, that line, I wish I'd known this 20 years ago, is the most common line we hear at Responder Alliance out of any other statement. It's just, I wish we knew.
Well, we're going to stop there and have a 15-minute break so you can wipe the tears, use the restroom, get a drink, get some raffle tickets, schmooze with some people. And then when we come back in 15 minutes, we're going to talk about the route to healing, supporting each other and ourselves. And we'll talk about some tools to send you all home with to not only know what this is, but also to know more about it and how to move through it. Okay, bye. Thank you so much to Laura McGladrey for sharing her wisdom and expertise around stress injuries. And thank you for listening to my podcast. And don't forget to tune into the August 1st episode, which will be part 2 of the series with Laura McGladrey. Part 2 is titled The Route to Healing, Supporting Each Other and Ourselves. Thanks so much to Rocky Talkie and Desert Mountain Medicine for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you want more content, head on over to Patreon and sign up. There are a lot of bonus episodes that you can learn from exclusive to Patreon supporters. And as always, remember, play hard and be smart.